All right. Well, hopefully this is working. I really hope it is. I anticipate about a 30-second delay from from when I'm actually talking to when you guys see it. So leave questions. If it doesn't look like I'm getting to them quickly, it's probably because of that. But we're going to be starting in a few seconds here. I'm just going to start muting some of the other background noises here so I don't hear myself talking. But yeah, we should be live very soon. And you guys should see a screen coming up where you can actually see me, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, so welcome. I know it's really early into the chat, but I just wanted to get things started. I know people will be coming in a little later, and that's totally cool. This should hopefully be recorded. So if you've missed it, or if you're in like a totally different part of the world and you can't see this live, don't worry about it. Go to bed if you need to go to bed. You'll see this hopefully recorded sometime tomorrow. But I wanted to first of all start by saying thank you so much for being here. It's been an incredible past 4 years now. This is actually around the same time that I started the Vegan Ostomy website, so it's a pretty cool anniversary, all around. And the support that you guys have been giving me is really what motivates me to go forward with it and continue to do what I do. So I really do appreciate that. But today we are here in celebration of my fourth Stomaversary. So it was 4 years ago today that I had my ileostomy done, and it was the first of two surgeries that I would have ultimately to get rid of everything and put stuff back where it's supposed to be. But it was by far the single most important day since I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So for those of you who don't know, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2008. And it's actually funny because Crohn's disease and IBD in general is, an inflammatory bowel disease. So you would expect problems with your digestive system, your bowel habits, that sort of thing. And for me, I was getting it was kind of like soreness and things like that when I was sitting down, like a lot of problems on my rear end. So it wasn't really digestive related, so to speak, but those symptoms started to come along after. So it was several years that I was kind of going back and forth, trying medications, going the alternative therapy route. Things weren't getting any better. There were a lot of ups and downs, but it was mostly down. Then in 2010, I had what I dubbed the Great Flare of 2010, and I essentially was bedridden the entire summer. It's kind of weird, actually, when I think about it, because when I go back and look at movies that might have come out in 2010 or songs, like albums, things like that, it's kind of like, well, I don't even remember that at all. So it's kind of like being in a time capsule and being opened up and discovering like this new world. So I was really sick in 2010. Got a little bit better, good enough to kind of trudge along, but things were still not very good. So I continued to look for ways to try to make myself feel better. I actually got involved with a clinical trial, and that was near the end of 2012, heading into 2013. And this clinical trial would put me on prednisone and then a biologic. That was part of the trial. Prednisone was unbelievable in two ways. One, it allowed me to eat almost like within days. I was just eating when before I couldn't do anything. I was like literally dry heaving or vomiting or just not being able to eat every day, pretty much all day. And within a matter of days, I was like gorging myself on prednisone, and it was pretty remarkable. But then problems started to kick in. It was kind of like trading off one thing for another, and I started to get like really severe side effects. I had lost a good part of my vision. Actually, it was pretty bizarre. I had like swelling in the legs. I could barely walk. Just pains everywhere. if you had a list of possible side effects for the drug, I had them, and probably more. I was hallucinating. It was just absolutely mind-blowing. And then I went on the biologic, and that didn't work, obviously, because now I'm here. But what ended up happening was I went in to go and see my GI, who was actually running the study, and he did a scope, found out that things weren't good at all. Actually, were looking worse than what they looked like before the trial started. So the decision was kind of like, look, you really should see a surgeon now and discuss, getting at least a temporary ostomy. But as we spoke more, it was kind of like, what? And then what? If I get a temporary ostomy, my colon is essentially useless right now. What am I going to do with that? Is this just going to be reoccurring for me? So that's really when I went in with the full intention to have a permanent ileostomy. So it wasn't too long after I actually got in to see the surgeon very quickly for the first appointment, and we had talked about essentially what the surgery would entail. Why did I feel I needed the surgery and that sort of thing. And it was kind of interesting because I was asking questions at that point. And some of the questions were things like, will I be able to walk around the block after the surgery? Like, is that going to be a thing, or am I kind of still limited? Will I be able to drive a vehicle? Because at that time I had actually stopped driving. I was in such severe pain that I essentially didn't feel safe driving or getting behind a vehicle. So I basically wasn't driving for like a year at least before my surgery. So, those were the questions that I was asking. And she reassured me everything was going to be okay. And it was a pretty interesting feeling because I was still pretty apprehensive. But by that time, I was in, so much pain. It was just not a life that I was able to live at all. And I just thought, what, let me just do this and get it over with. At least I'll be done with part of this nonsense with Crohn's disease. And that's when I actually started looking at other advocates. And at the time, I wasn't an advocate. I didn't get into it. When I had Crohn's disease, I was a bad Crohn's patient. I wasn't in contact with anyone. I wasn't really social in that regard. And so I started looking at ostomy advocates. Like, what the hell are these people doing? Are they actually able to live their life? Like, what are they doing? So that's when I started discovering channels like The Stolen Colon, Let's Talk IBD, Outpatient. There were several of them, and they really inspired me almost immediately. As I continued to watch more and more of these videos, I thought, if these guys are doing it, why can't I? This is the life. They feel better, they look good, they're able to do all kinds of things, and it was really unbelievable. So that's actually when I started to consider just recording, what was going to happen with my ostomy surgery and how I was going to progress. And that's when I started the Vegan Ostomy website. So that was a few weeks before my actual surgery. So the surgery, man, I went into that surgery like in really bad shape. Like, my wife was like wheelchairing me into the hospital. It was that bad. But like right up until the second that we were going into that I was going into surgery, I was just in pain and just like running in the bathroom, and it was just a miserable life. Funny enough, actually, just to kind of summarize that whole experience, we had a fire alarm like at 3 a.m. at the hotel that I was staying at, just before, the morning of my surgery. So it was kind of like, what, just everything's going to hell. Let's just do this. I went in like, let's just do this. And so that was it. I went in, I spoke to the nurse, spoke to the anesthesiologist. I spoke to all the medical staff. My surgeon was there. I saw her before we actually, did the procedure, and I came out like a new man. It was unbelievable. I think I remember the first thing that I said was something like, no more Crohn's pains. And it was at that moment I thought, man, this is going to really change my life so much. And after that surgery, I was actually a little loopy because of the anesthetics that I was on, which is kind of like a side effect that I tend to have. So I was kind of loopy and in and out and stuff like that. But I remember, I do remember just feeling so much better in that regard. I had pains from the surgery, that's normal, but I didn't have those pains. And it was really a defining moment, I think, in my life, at least in the last, 10 years, that I would say really set me on a totally different path. And that was the beginning of all this. After that, I started just slowly, eating more food, eating healthier. I started doing things that I wasn't able to do when I was really sick, but then I started doing way more things that I really would never have considered doing. Roller coasters. If anyone knows me, you would know that roller coasters are kind of my thing. I love them. That was something I would have never considered doing ever before my ostomy. And that was something that I grew to love after my ostomy. I started traveling thanks to the blog and the invites that I was getting to speak. So that was amazing, like just totally mind-blowing. I was able to go kayaking, go-karting, do indoor mountain climbing, and just do all kinds of things that I just never would have expected prior to that, while I was sick. And when you're really sick like that, a lot of the times you just lose hope. Like you don't see a future, For me, during the great flare of 2010, just surviving was all that was on my mind. How the hell do I get through the next minute, the next hour? This is going to be brutal. How do I do it? And that's all I thought about. That was kind of like survival mode, almost like autopilot, and you can't plan anything at that point. You can't look towards the future. You can't do anything because you just have no hope. So this really lifted me out of that, and I'm so grateful for having this surgery and having just being alive in a time that we can have a surgery like this is just unbelievable to me. And as you guys probably know, especially if you're in the US, today was the day of the great solar eclipse, which is just kind of unbelievable. It coincides with this Stomaversary, and it just kind of summarizes how amazing everything is. When just something small happens that just changes the course of your life. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So thank you guys for following me on my journey and supporting me through this. I truly wish that each and every one of you who are either thinking of having the surgery or have one scheduled or have just come out of the surgery, I truly hope that you all find, the support and encouragement like I have. And I truly hope that you don't let the ostomy limit you. That's the worst thing you can do. And for me, attitude is really the number one thing that you can do for yourself to change what's going to happen to you in the future. If you come in positive, even if things aren't going smoothly. And I know at the beginning, things aren't going to go smoothly. You're going to have leaks. You're going to have probably skin irritation. I had all kinds of these little problems that were kind of annoying. But you know what? I thought this is just like a baby step. Once I get through this, it's going to get better. And as these little successes started to accumulate, I started to build up that confidence in knowing, what, now I'm able to do more with this thing. I'm comfortable with it. I know exactly, how to change it properly. I know how to kind of manage what I'm eating with my ostomy. I can do all these things. So, then you start testing the waters and you become better at things and you know how to manage problems when they happen. And you know what? Things may happen. For a lot of people, they do. You might have a leak in public. Just deal with it. Deal with it on the spot. Be positive. This is just one moment in time. And that's it. Once you've taken care of that, just go and do what you need to do. Live the rest of your life, because that was just one little blip in time. Don't let it bother you so much. So I truly hope that you guys get the same support that I do. So I'm just going to read some of your comments here. Thank you so much again for coming in and writing some of these. Hello, congrats, happy 4th. Thank you guys so much. If you have any questions at all about my experience with having an ostomy, or what life was like maybe with IBD, or how I manage my appliance and things like that, just let me know. If there's products maybe that you were interested in that perhaps I've tried and you have questions about, just let me know in the comments section. So I see you guys commenting, yeah, God, I hate prednisone. Moonface, bad acne. Yeah, I gained something like 50 pounds, I think it was, in 2 weeks. So somewhere on the website, I actually do have like some before and after photos. The before photo, I think, was actually taken several days after I started prednisone. So I gained like a few pounds right away, but I took that photo, and then like a couple of weeks later, I was almost unrecognizable. And it's kind of funny. I like to joke because when if any of you use Google Photos, it'll like match your face. It'll match people's faces in your photos, and then you can identify them. It didn't know who I was. It thought I was a totally different person. And just looking at the pictures, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't look like me. And that was just because of the swelling in the moon face from prednisone. Hey, Brittany. It says I'm coming up 3 years Stomaversary, gone so quick. Congratulations, you've made it this far, and I know you're gonna blow through that. It's fantastic. Adams Laura wrote, I'm only 6 months in with a functioning ileostomy. You're one of the first channels I found. You know what? Thanks for sticking around. I hope that the information that's on the YouTube channel and also on my website, I hope it's benefited you. I've had so many people comment about having a temporary ostomy and just being totally lost, not knowing heads or tails, because a lot of the times people get out of the hospital and they're not given like any information, no education at all, and it's kind of like, here, figure it out, right? And that's like just terrible. I can't imagine having that experience. So I'm really glad that a lot of you have connected with me in one way or another. Even if you're just lurking, silently in the backyard, in the background, watching those videos, that's great. I hope you find the information useful. Thanks, Susan. First time watching a YouTube live. Hey, Grace. Yeah, it's the first time for me actually doing a YouTube live. I experimented a little bit with Facebook Live. I think that was like a total disaster. I couldn't actually read any comments that were coming through. It was just totally not working out to my advantage. But then I did Instagram and then Twitter. So this is the first time I'm actually doing YouTube. And, I really apologize for all you guys following me on YouTube. I do a lot of these kind of recorded, educational videos, but I never really have a chance to say hi and do something like this. So, if you want me to do more of these, let me know. It's certainly possible. I can certainly do it. I mean, I have a webcam, I have a mic and an internet connection, so why not? But just let me know. If we have topics to talk about, I think it gets a little bit easier. It can't always be like hey, how are you kind of thing, but whatever works. Hey, Don, how's it going? Don, I'm going to answer your question shortly. I did make a note of it, and I do have a couple things to say about that. So, yeah, okay. So there's a question here: how to go to the gym with an ostomy. So that's actually a really great question. Anytime you have plans to either return, back to the gym or start playing sports again or doing anything like physical activity, you really do want to talk to your stoma nurse and your surgeon. So you want to get the okay, first of all, from your surgeon. They have to say, yeah, you're healed up enough, you're okay to start, slowly getting back into exercise. But you want to talk to your ostomy nurse because chances are they're going to want you to have some kind of hernia support belt. So what that does is it applies pressure along your abdomen, and that will keep things tight and hopefully prevent hernias. Now, a lot of the time, they'll give you kind of risk factors for hernias and things like that. Chances are, if you're going to the gym, if you've been to the gym and you're just returning back to it, you may have the muscle tone to be at a low risk. But it's still really important to make sure that you're not pushing yourself, that you're, doing the proper technique when you're lifting, especially when you're working with really heavy weights. But definitely talk to a stoma nurse and your surgeon. Make sure you get the okay, and then look at something like a hernia support belt. Yeah, Susan. So you mentioned you have no help with diet. And that's another thing. I've had people write me saying, so and so, my spouse or whoever they know is in the hospital right now. We don't know what happened, and it's kind of like, okay, let's retrace the steps. And I remember one person mentioning that I think it was their husband or maybe their wife, it doesn't matter, but they had been released from the hospital. They had a really big salad like within a day or two, and they were totally blocked up. And somebody should have told them not to do that. So it's really unfortunate when you're not getting diet information, especially if you have an ileostomy. We're more prone to having blockages. And, I've been in the hospital because of a blockage. Very careless when I was eating at that particular moment, but I learned a lot from it. But, there are certain foods that really you do want to avoid at the beginning. There are certain ways of preparing your food that you want to be mindful of. So, don't go crazy with, eating produce with their skins and seeds and all kinds of stuff like that. Take it easy. If you like cucumbers like I do, de-seed it, take the skin off, start slowly, eat it like that. And once you feel comfortable, once you know that your body can tolerate that, and you know that your output is looking good, it's, you didn't get any blockages or anything like that, then you start working your way up. So like now, where I went from de-seeding everything and kind of peeling everything, now, I'm eating cucumbers whole, no problem. It doesn't bother me at all, but I had to kind of build up to that point. And that's kind of where I think most of your foods are going to be. You're going to have to just experiment and go slowly with it. Now, if you have the option to either steam or boil or process in some way the food that you're eating, do that as a first step, because it's a hell of a lot easier to eat and digest food once it's been processed or cooked, or managed in some way like that, than it is to eat it raw or unprocessed. So even things, for example, like grains, Ezekiel bread is fantastic, tastes great, healthy for you. But don't start off on that if you've just had like a stoma surgery, okay? That's probably not going to go through very well. You're probably going to see all those seeds come out. It'll be alarming, but you don't want that stuff to kind of clump up and get stuck somewhere. So start off easy, white bread, perfectly fine if it avoids getting a blockage, believe me, and then work your way up. You can go to whole wheat from there and etc. So just take it slow. Yeah, thanks for chiming in. So Grace Lee, one of the people who are on the chat, she is super fit and she does a lot of exercising and stuff like that with her stoma. So you want to check her out. She might have some advice there, but definitely use caution if you're going to get back into that, especially sports and exercise. Yep. I was told to eat thickeners, steam my veggies, no skins. Yeah, so some people are told if you have an ileostomy, okay, chances are like at a surgery you're going to have very liquid output. I think for like 2 or 3 days I just had basically like bile, so it was very liquidy, not very pleasant to manage, but for me to leave the hospital, they actually wanted my output to calm down a bit, slow down a little bit, both in volume and frequency. So after unsuccessfully trying to, get food into me that would thicken up my output, the nurses started bringing in potato chips, and that worked for me. So that was kind of funny. And I'm going to justify it by saying, look, we need more sodium. Potato chips have potassium, and it thickened up my output. So, hey, sometimes unhealthy foods can be perfectly fine in certain situations. But other people will actually be recommended stool thickeners, so certain fiber supplements and things like that. I think Metamucil might be one of them that some people are told to take. That's fine. If your doctor has told you to do that, do that. I prefer just to eat more starchy foods, and to me that really slows things down. It really thickens things up. And my ostomy tends to be on the thicker side naturally, and it's most likely because I eat a lot of those starches and things like that. So that'll vary from person to person and, the type of ostomy that you have. Yeah, I was told never to eat seeds. Yeah, so for the nurses out there, bless you. You do a fantastic job. But I have to disagree with you on some of the do not eat foods, because for most of us, those foods are perfectly safe. but you have to exercise caution. So like I'm of the camp that it really doesn't matter what you're eating. It's how you're eating it that makes the difference. So for me, if I'm eating beans and I'm just swallowing them whole, I'm going to get a blockage no matter what. It doesn't matter what kind of bean. It doesn't matter how I prepared it. I'm going to get a blockage. But I could be eating something like, I don't know, what's a problem food for some people? Apples or peaches with the skin on them. And as long as I'm chewing it really well, I'll never have a problem. So I think for the most part, when we're told like, don't have seeds at all, don't have this and that, unless you're a special case. So unless, for example, you've had a history of blockages or strictures or something mechanical going on that would benefit from not having seeds in there, there's really no reason to avoid it. Once you've given the okay after usually it's about 4 to 6 weeks after your surgery. So don't take my advice over your nurses. Okay, this is my experience, but these are my thoughts on it, and I truly believe that some people end up missing very healthy foods or skipping very healthy foods from their diet just because they've been told, no, don't touch it. You shouldn't be eating that. You shouldn't be touching it. But you know what? A lot of the times it's not going to cause a problem, right? People are told to eat low fiber foods, no skins, no this, no that. Up to a certain point, yeah, that's true. You don't want to be eating that a week after your surgery, but 6 months, a year down the road, you can loosen up a little bit and you can start eating those foods again. Experiment. It's not gonna kill you until it does, right? So if you have a problem, make sure you use your head, right? But for me personally, I just took it slow at the beginning and I just started to build up this kind of tolerance for this type of food. So now I'm eating lots of very bulky foods, very fibrous foods, a lot of foods that really do need to be chewed up. So like mushrooms, corn, things like that. I can eat mushrooms. That's not a problem. But if I'm not chewing it properly, once in a while, I can see like, a quarter of a mushroom come out in my bag and I'm like, you know what? I should probably be more careful. So observe what's coming out of you. That's actually one really good way to figure out whether or not you are chewing well enough, whether you are passing things through the way they should be. So if you notice a lot of like food bits in there, don't expect your stomach to break down like heavy cellulose in plant matter, right? Your stomach is not going to break down corn kernels. It's just not, okay? So chew as well as you can. Make sure that your food is as liquefied as it possibly can be. And then see what it looks like coming out. If you can't identify any food, you're doing a great job. If you can, work on it. Just work on it and you'll get better. You'll learn how to just slow down and chew. That's how I do it anyway. Yeah, if you have a good ostomy nurse, they'll tell you to only introduce one new food at a time. That's right. And that's kind of, I would say that's like the best practice, right? You don't want to just have a salad with all these new foods in there. And then, if a problem happens, well, I don't know, was it the tomatoes? Was it the cucumbers? Was it the onions? What was it, right? You want to take one thing at a time. And this is also helpful because sometimes you may have a reaction to food that may not cause a blockage, but it may cause your output to become liquid. Or maybe too thick, like too difficult to manage in that way. Or perhaps you're eating something that just like gives you diarrhea and just some unexpected output like that. You want to make sure that you know kind of what foods are going to cause that reaction, if any are, and then take it from there the next time you have that meal. You might want to have less or avoid it. It's totally up to you. What do you think of veggie smoothies with some fruit? Smoothies are something that I try to have quite often. And smoothies are actually, I would prefer smoothies over like a juice. And the reason for that is because when you're juicing something, you are actually taking away the beneficial fibers. Now, fiber plays a role not only in like cancer prevention and all kinds of really healthy benefits like that, but fiber is good because that's what the bacteria in your gut is feeding off of, right? So there's like prebiotics, and that's things that you might find in flax seeds. Flax seeds are very high in, I think it's lignans, and those act as a prebiotic. So they're food for your bacteria. And the happier your gut bacteria is, the happier your body's going to be. And when you remove that, when you remove the fiber like you would in juicing, you kind of lose that. You also lose the advantage of having fiber in something that might have a lot of sugar, even if it's natural sugar like fruit, to slow down that absorption. And that might be important for you if you have, for example, type 2 diabetes or something like that where you're monitoring that. You want to make sure the fiber's in. So smoothies are fantastic. Smoothies keep me full where juice won't. So that might be something to consider as well. If you're making like a big smoothie for your meal, for your breakfast or lunch, that's going to keep you way more satisfied than like juicing something and then like feeling hungry 20 minutes later, because that's what tends to happen, right? So yeah, definitely blend stuff. You can make blended salads instead of like a fruit smoothie, and that's one way to go. If you need to thicken up your output, add a couple bananas in that smoothie. That'll help. Yeah, definitely keep a food diary for sure. For sure. I was tracking both the foods that I was eating and how they were like reacting with me, as well as like the nutrients that they contain. So I wanted to make sure I was getting enough calories, enough protein, things like that. Especially after recovery, I found that was really important to log and track, because I just didn't know, would I be eating enough? Am I eating enough? Am I not eating enough? Am I getting enough nutrients in there? So that was really helpful for me. Has anyone tried drinks with probiotics? Any luck? So probiotics are kind of a lot of people talk probiotics. Now, I used to be on like a ton of different probiotics at different the gas should go away, but for me it was just like ongoing. It was creating more issues with the bowel urgency that I had. So to me it was like, like why spend the money, right? I focus more now on making sure that I am getting those prebiotics in, and I do that through plant-based foods, the fibers, and I let the bacteria just recolonize and do what it has to do on its own without introducing anything extra. Now, another thing you might consider as far as probiotics are concerned is if you are on antibiotics because of your therapy for IBD or whatever, then that may help to bring back some of that gut flora and kind of recolonize your gut. But that's something you really should talk to your doctor about. You'll probably find mixed opinions as far as probiotics are concerned. Now, as far as like if you want to use probiotics to treat or help treat your IBD, maybe augment some drug therapy, VSL number 3, as far as I know, is one of the only ones that have been shown clinically to help with ulcerative colitis at least. I think it's still up in the air whether it helps with Crohn's disease, so you might just want to look into that. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't looked at that data for a while now, but I believe for UC, it's shown to at least have some improvements with patients, but it's not gonna cure you. And I want to make that really clear, because a lot of companies that try to sell probiotics, it's like they're selling like holy water. Like this is going to be the only product that you need to get rid of your IBD. And that's just flat out false. Okay, unless they have the data and the clinical the clinical data to show you this is actually what's happening in a large number of patients, and we're able to repeat this, take it with a grain of salt, okay? Especially if it's a very expensive probiotic. Yeah, so what about Lean Boost? So plant proteins, fibers that you add to smoothies. I don't add fiber supplements to really anything that I eat at all. I get so much fiber in my diet. Like, I think Health Canada recommends something like 30 grams of fiber a day, something like that. I think I'm getting like at least twice that amount. Maybe even higher than that. So there's like, I'm getting a lot of fiber. I don't add any fiber supplements. Now, the first, I don't know, I want to say couple weeks after surgery, I was using a protein supplement, and it was more of like a meal replacement. So like it was fortified with vitamins and minerals and that sort of thing, but it had the protein component in there. Now, part of that was because I wasn't eating enough calories to really make up for any protein deficits, and I wanted to help speed my recovery along with that, so I added that in. Now, that was the one that I used was a brand from PC. So if you're in Canada, and I'm not sure if it's even in all of Canada or just like Ontario, but if you have like a Loblaws near you or a superstore, Real Canadian Superstore, they have like the PC protein, plant protein. That's the one that I was on like years ago. I noticed that Walmart is now carrying a vegan protein powder. I haven't tried it yet. I so want to try it, but I haven't gotten around to doing that just to see how it tastes. Because I know if somebody, has to use some kind of meal replacement or anything like that, it's got to taste good, right? You don't want to eat something that tastes like plasticine and then it's kind of like, So anyway, at some point I might try that, but I know Walmart does have something out there. Hey, Emily, my 6-month Stomaversary was yesterday. Well, congratulations and happy 6-month Stomaversaries. That's fantastic. Okay, so a couple people in the chat are talking about sleep and, essentially not being able to sleep through the night because they have to empty their bag. Now, for those of you who have IBD, I do want to throw it out there. Tomorrow on Twitter, there's going to be an IBD social circle Twitter chat. And the topic is sleep and IBD. So if you have IBD, maybe, even before you have your ostomy, or maybe even with an ostomy, they're going to talk about some strategies as far as how to get, restful sleep. For me, sleep was an absolute nightmare when I was flaring. It was just waking up many, many times a night, often in like a cold sweat, several times a night, just waking up in a cold sweat like that or having to go to the bathroom. So I know it was a challenge. But specifically with an ostomy, most people will find that, they have to empty their appliance throughout the night, and that can be quite annoying, but it really impacts your sleep. So there are a couple of strategies to dealing with that. I know some people, they swear by, not eating past 6. If that works for you, definitely stick to that. For me, honestly, I'll get really hungry if I stop eating at 6. So like I eat until whenever, like midnight, 1 o'clock, it doesn't matter. Like I'll just be eating when I'm hungry. But that obviously has some problems with emptying my bag at night. Usually I will be waking up at least once in the middle of the night or very early in the morning. So it's at least once or twice. But, if I time it right, if I'm not eating a lot, and that I think has more to do with it than the timing. So if I'm eating human-sized meals, then I usually don't have to wake up to empty my appliance. But if I'm eating just like a big dinner, like a big late night snack, that's asking for trouble, and then I'm going to be up all the time. At the beginning, though, I will say probably the first few months, my stoma was like pretty high output, and it was like a liquid output. So it was really challenging to manage, and I was probably up like 2, 3, 4 times a night at the beginning, and then that kind of settled down a little bit. So if you're like a new ostomate and you find yourself having these challenges with sleeping, keep in mind that it will probably just normalize and calm down after some time. If you have your colon out and you have an ileostomy, your small bowel now has to take on the function of a colon, and the colon really does serve the function of removing a lot of fluids from your stool. That's why your stool comes out dry when it comes out your bum, or it should come out dry-ish. So when you have an ileostomy, like that feature is gone, right? But what I found is that after probably about, I'm going to say a year, and the timeline just totally escapes me. I'm going to say a year, but I would probably say that after a certain amount of time, considerable amount of time, months we're talking, your body will eventually adapt, and it will start to, function a little bit better. So you may not be waking up as often. You may not for example, you may not have to drink as often. And I know hydration is a big thing with ostomates. I tend to not be drinking like 4 liters of water or fluids every day. It's just, to me, I find it just to be totally unnecessary. But I know some people are still there where they're still drinking several liters a day. And that's totally normal for where you're at. If you feel like you're thirsty and you need to drink all the time, just keep doing that. There may be other reasons why you're thirsty, right? It could be medication. It could just be, the illness. If you're just in recovery, there could be a lot of factors there. But once everything is settled and you've recovered and all that stuff, if you still find that you need to drink a lot, just drink. Don't limit yourself, because I don't drink much. But also keep in mind that a lot of the foods that I'm eating have a lot of water in them, right? So like if I'm eating oranges all the time, or watermelon, or cucumbers, or tomatoes, or salads, like large salads, that's a lot of water and fluids that I'm getting without actually having to drink it. So that's another thing to consider, right? Okay, now I want to get back to a question that Dawn had asked. Dawn, I can see that you're in the chat here. Now you ask, what do you do for dry skin under your barrier? Some days it can get very itchy. And, I says, I know we aren't supposed to use anything that would make your skin greasy or oily. Now that's an interesting problem to have, because, obviously you can't put like a Lubriderm on your skin and then stick an appliance on there. It's just not going to work. Now, there are a couple of suggestions. Now, if you have access to a stoma nurse who can just look at the area, examine it, because I don't know if there might be something else going on with the skin. I'm just like totally guessing here that it's just not a problem with your skin, and maybe just, it's just dry because of the appliance or whatever. Hollister has products made with ceramide. Now, ceramide is naturally found in the skin. Their line of products is called Cera Plus. Now, they actually have wafers that have this stuff in it that's supposed to help bring that moisture level back and bring your skin back to a more healthy state. They also have barrier rings that are made of the same stuff. I think the rings are actually called Cera rings, if I'm gonna, and that's Sarah with a C-E-R-A, not Sarah like my friend Sarah. Okay, so you might want to consider that. Another option, if you don't want to change your appliance to a different brand or anything like that, another option is something that somebody had mentioned to me. It's a product by Coloplast, and it's called the Brava Barrier Cream. Now, this stuff is actually supposed to be meant for tackling dry skin caused by adhesives or your output and things like that. So the idea is, and I haven't tried it myself, not yet anyway, you put it on your skin and it will absorb into your skin, and it won't leave like any kind of greasy film or anything like that that's going to prevent your wafer from sticking on. So that might be something to consider. I don't know if that product is available like everywhere, whether it's available only in Canada or in like all over the world, but it's called Brava Barrier Cream. And I believe the number is the 120001, but don't quote me on that. Okay. So it's Brava Barrier Cream. Look it up, request a sample. That might help. Yep. So someone's saying that they've had luck with stoma powder and a barrier spray. When it gets really bad, antifungal powder if it looks like yeast. Now, usually, so when I tend to use stoma powders or any kind of thing like that, that's usually because my skin is like red or weepy. So it's like kind of the opposite of the dry skin. And that has the same problem, right? Your wafer's not going to stick properly. It's a mess. And that's when I will usually use a stoma powder and then put some kind of barrier product over that. And that creates a nice substrate for your wafer to actually stick on. But you know what? For some people, that might work, right? For some people, that barrier product that they put on there, and it could be anything. It could be the Cavalon, 3M Cavalon. It could be like just regular, barrier wipes. That might help your skin. Right? There could be 1,001 reasons why your skin is dry. And unfortunately, through just a quick dialogue like this, I can't diagnose that. I can't tell you what the problem might be, but that might be one option for some people, definitely. Yeah, so hey Brony, so you mentioned I have ulcers under my wafer. What should I use? So first of all, if you have anything like ulcers, it's like especially if you have an IBD, okay, so Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or anything in that umbrella, you have to really be careful because sometimes like what looks like ulcers, that could actually be a manifestation of the illness. And you want to have somebody look at it, whether it's your GI, whether it's your surgeon, like somebody, probably a stoma nurse too. Somebody should look at that and then diagnose whether or not it's an ulcer from like a pressure ulcer, like a pressure sore. And that could be just how you're wearing your appliance. If you're wearing a convex appliance, for example, and you have an accessory belt on and that's really tight, that may lead to pressure ulcers. Now, those type of things are like, I would consider that a wound. And I'm probably certain most ET nurses would consider that a wound. So you have to treat that as a wound. And there may be special products specifically designed to take care of that. But the idea is you're going to want to have it covered with something, some product that provides a substrate for your barrier to go on and stick properly. So that's something that your stoma nurse should be able to guide you on. Hopefully you do have access to one, but definitely look into that because any kind of ulcers or pressure sores or anything like that tend to be very insidious. You know, they may not look too bad, but then they have a tendency to get much worse if they're left untreated. And that's not something you want to experience. It'll definitely create complications if you just leave it or if it's left untreated or it's not treated properly. So good luck with that. Favorite current ostomy products? For barrier rings, I use Hollister ring, but I'm not sure if trying something new. Yeah. Okay. So my favorite products right now, honestly, I really love my Stealth belt. I love any of those support bands, those support belts. I wear them all the time. They just change the way my appliance feels and how it looks and how it acts, and just there's so many benefits. I have a video and I have an article on why I wear my appliance sideways, but that's one of the products that I really enjoy wearing. I like things like pouch covers too when I'm not wearing the Stealth belt or a band like that. I really like wearing pouch covers. I wear clear bags. They're clear Hollister New Image bags. Nobody wants to see what's inside my bag. Nobody in my family. I'm sure none of you guys want to see what's inside my bag. So I really enjoy wearing pouch covers. And, that's just a product that I like. As far as actual supplies go, I'm pretty minimalist. So like I have a wafer, I have a bag, 2-piece system. That's pretty much it. I don't need to use any extra accessories or supplies. I will use pouch deodorant from time to time. And right now I'm kind of in between experimenting. I had one guy actually on my community forums. He had run a bunch of experiments with Hollister M9 pouch deodorant. And the theory was, if this stuff is killing like bacteria that's causing gas and odor, maybe it'll help with pouch ballooning. Maybe it'll help to reduce the instances of pouch ballooning. So he wrote about it. You can check out his experiment, but he basically tested the theory and concluded that, the M9 drops from Hollister really do help to cut down on the amount of gas that's in your bag. So that's what I've been using. I've used Hollister M9 before, but once he mentioned that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to buy another bottle. I'm going to try this out. And that's what I've been using kind of off and on. And I honestly do find that I have less gas in my bag when I'm using that product. So again, the theory is it's killing the bacteria that's causing gas to come. Because I don't know if any of you've noticed, but sometimes when you just have output in your bag and you don't necessarily have gas, your bag can still balloon. And that's the bacteria kind of creating that byproduct, creating that gas. And that's what's filling up your bag. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, in an hour, I've got like this bag full of gas and I haven't heard gas, I haven't felt gas, I haven't, been gassy. So what's going on? That's exactly what's going on. So, sometimes, if you have gas as a problem, you can deal with that through, dietary changes and whatnot. But if the gas is being created inside your bag, you're going to have to tackle it a different way. So that might be something to consider. It's definitely a very cool thing. And I'm sure other products do that. I have a bottle of Nascent over here, which I promised I would try again, kind of like a round 2 for my review, and see how that works. But I know that one there is supposed to kind of kill the bacteria that causes the odor. And I have a feeling that might also help to prevent some of that ballooning as well. So we'll see about that, but definitely try something like that. Other than that, I mean, there are other products that I use, other accessories that I use, but they're kind of like on a need to use basis. So, for example, stoma guards. I don't wear stoma guards all the time, every day, nothing like that. But if I'm in a situation where I know, like, I'm probably going to get my stoma hit, or, I have to wear maybe a dress shirt tucked into pants, I might wear a stoma guard. So that it serves a purpose for that, one situation. But, that's something that I love to keep handy too. I've got like a goodie box here full of accessories and stuff like that. So it's, there's a lot to love, but there are definitely products that do not work well. And some of them that I would consider dangerous. And I've got a few reviews on those products, on the YouTube channel. Actually, you can see those. Yeah, so are the M9 drops different from the M9 spray? I've actually never used the M9 spray. Now, I'm under the impression that the M9 spray is for the air, or is it something you would spray in your bag? Because I can't envision spraying that in your bag when you can just put drops in. So I'm not sure exactly how that product works. M9 drops are not scented. So if the spray is scented, I would imagine it would be something you're either spraying maybe even in the toilet, like a poopery product, or in the air as just like a general room air freshener. And I know Coloplast has those as well. Yeah, funny story actually. I had one of the Coloplast air fresheners when I was in the hospital, because I was in a ward and I was super nauseated, and my output was a lot of bile, and I just found the odor of the bile to be super offensive. So the nurse at the hospital gave me one of the Coloplast sprays, and it's not like a Brava spray or anything like that. It's one of their other product lines, and it did the trick, it did the job, but I can't smell that anymore. It gives me really bad really bad vibes. It almost triggers me because I associate it with those really bad smell and that bad situation, just being in a ward with other people's smells and bowel smells, and I can't use it anymore. But it did the trick at the time. Okay, so the M9 sprays. The M9 spray is for a room, like an air freshener, basically. Yeah, I haven't tried it. I may try it. I'm not 100% sure. I don't believe my insurance covers room air fresheners. They'll cover in-pouch deodorants, but I don't believe they'll cover room air fresheners. That's probably the reason why I haven't even tried it at all. So if I can get a sample, maybe I might give that a whirl. We have a 30-year veteran ostomate here. Hey man, that's fantastic. I'm not going to really attempt to say your name. Let's just say Miss Wells. Hey, Miss Wells, thank you for dropping by. That's amazing. 30 years. You can teach us some of your wisdom. That's fantastic. I can't imagine it was easy 30 years ago to adapt well with an ostomy, because I would imagine the education piece was just really hard to come by back then, right? I would imagine, and the appliances would have probably been very, very different from what they are today. I think we're kind of spoiled today because we have so many dozens of types of appliances now from many different brands, and I don't know what it would have been like 30 years ago. I don't even know if most of the brands that we have today even had products out that long. I don't know. It's amazing. Yeah, one of the interesting things is like I tend to avoid using room fresheners because, like, for me personally, I find that it irritates like my nose, my eyes. It kind of bothers me all around. Whereas if I'm putting a deodorant like right inside my bag, you're like, you don't even think about it. You don't smell it afterwards. Nobody else has to smell it afterwards, unless it's like a scented deodorant that goes in my bag. And I haven't, with the exception, I would say, of the Coloplast lubricating deodorant, I haven't really used scented deodorants that often, at least not lately. It's been more the unscented type. But whatever works, right? Some people like the fragrances, some people don't. So 30 years ago, yeah, so using the Convitex Stomaadhesive line, which surprisingly was not much different from now. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess if it's worked for 30 years, it must be a good thing. But at the same time, you want to see new products, new styles, new technologies being implemented, right? So, and I know actually, I know for some manufacturers, they still hang on to like legacy products because, there are people who've had ostomies for decades that they don't want to switch. It works for them. There's no reason to switch. I'm kind of in the same camp, right? If it works for me, there's no reason to switch. And I would imagine they feel the same way. So for some of us, it's great when new products come out. But for other people, they're not going to switch, Why bother? I don't blame you. I don't blame them. Wow, yeah. My grandmother was diagnosed with UC in the 30s and had her colostomy in the late 1930s. Can you imagine? Wow, that is just unbelievable. Your grandmother must be a real trooper. That's just phenomenal. I've seen some like older ostomy appliances, and when I say older, I'm not talking like 20 years, 30 years. I'm talking like when they were made of metal, literally made of metal. And it's just, it's unbelievable. I can't imagine wearing something like that. But if that's all you have, what are you going to do, right? You just gotta grin and bear it. But back then, it must have been so much more difficult to just do things with that. I would imagine. I mean, I don't think it would have contained smell the same way. I mean, we're very lucky these days, but it really is amazing if you can get somewhere. Sometimes hospitals will have this. Sometimes ostomy associations might have this. But if you can get somewhere where you can see some like really old appliances, it will really make you appreciate some of the ones that we have today. And I know I like to like bitch and moan about, like the cloth fabric on Hollister bags falling apart when they get wet, or filters not working, things like that. But when you look at some of these appliances that people had to wear like many, many decades ago, we're super lucky to have what we have. So I don't like to complain too much. Yeah, are you afraid that when you get older, someone will have to help you change the bag? Yeah, that is a concern that has crossed my mind. I mean, I'm still fairly young, and hopefully don't have to worry about that for some time. But yeah, that's always crossed my mind. Like, am I gonna be dependent on someone else to change my bag, to do all that? Now, knock on wood, if there's wood around, knock on wood. In 20, 30, 40 years from now, 50 years for some of you, who knows what the ostomy landscape is going to look like, right? There might be some phenomenal new product that maybe you don't even have to do anything with, right? Maybe it just like dissolves your output and it, I don't know, returns it back into the air as oxygen or something like that. And like, you never have to change it. Who knows? Maybe there's some kind of adhesive that goes on and like, you don't have to change it for like 5 years at a time. Who knows? I don't know. But, it would be interesting how, like what care looks like that far into the future. It's anyone's guess. Maybe at that point we'll have like, artificial intestines and colons that we can just re-implant and we're good to go. I don't know if I'd go for something like that. Maybe, who knows? I'd probably have to archive the website if I did, but if that option ever became available, that might just put an end to the question right there. So who knows? Protective rings, yeah. Thanks for mentioning that, Don. For those who don't know, Coloplast has a newer barrier ring. Now, these are called the protective rings. They do have like barrier rings or moldable rings, they call them in the Brava line. The protective rings are like an upgraded version of it. They last longer. They don't melt as easily. They're easier to take off. They're like all around, like benefits all around. And if you have an opportunity to try it, if you're already using barrier rings, give it a shot. I don't know if it's available everywhere yet. In Canada, it is available. It may or may not be available in the US yet, but contact Coloplast, see if they've got the product available that you can sample and try it, especially if you are using other barrier products, because I think you're going to be very surprised by how it works. So I think we're at the 1 hour mark. I don't know if you want me to continue talking, guys. I'm having a great time here. If you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to continue with this. So yeah, so there's some talk here about I live in Ontario. I've chatted about medical coverage benefits. Yeah, wanted to know what you have yours through. Okay, mine are terrible. Yeah. Oh, insurance. So having an ostomy is a pre-existing condition, right? Every insurance company will say, yeah, that's a pre-existing condition. And then you're either locked out from getting the insurance or they slap you with like a super expensive premium. Now, I know when I had my ostomy, I didn't get into any kind of health insurance or anything like that until several months later, because I completely underestimated how expensive it was going to be to pay for supplies. So at the time I was kind of like, I mean, how much could it be, right? Like $40 here, $50 there. It's not a lot. But I learned really quickly that it could be $200 a month, it could be $250 a month, and that gets very expensive. So I started looking around for private insurance. And I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but here in Ontario, we actually have an ostomy grant. So at the time, and this is 4 years ago, the grant wasn't much. It was like, I don't know, $600 or something, and now it's like over $900 a year. And that's to pay for ostomy supplies. So that wasn't enough. That wasn't going to cut it. So I started looking around for insurance. So I called a couple places. I called essentially all the major insurance companies, and they all basically said, no, it's a pre-existing condition. We're not going to touch you. Or they would say, yeah, here's $200 a month premium. And I was like, what? To cover $200 of supplies a month, I got to pay $200 premium? Doesn't make any sense to me. So I ended up finding the company Green Shield. Now, Green Shield has really good plans when it comes to ostomy supplies, but it is tiered from like the first 3 years. So, and I don't know if they've changed this at all, because I'm already past like the 3rd year. So I don't know if their policy's different or if the amounts are different. But I believe when I first started, I had like a yearly allowance of something like $1,500 in supplies, and then I believe it went up to like $2,500, and then $5,000. Which is phenomenal. I don't think anyone is really using $5,000 worth of ostomy supplies, but if you run into a problem, you know how expensive it can be. But in any case, so I'm going with Green Shield. Now they also cover some other things. So for example, they have like travel insurance benefits. I think they'll cover like hospital stays, but it depends on the plan that you're on. They'll cover like optometrist appointment and eyeglasses and stuff like that. So I get more than just ostomy supplies being covered. And like for the whole family or family of 4, it's like $76 or something like that a month, which is really good. Now the only problem, and it's not really a problem, it's kind of like just expected, but they wait for your ostomy grant to be used up before they start covering you. So if you're like super conservative and like you only need wafers and pouches and you're like no other supplies and you can get by with just the ostomy grant, they're probably not going to be covering anything for you, because they're going to keep saying, well, you know what, you still have like $900 to go before we start covering you. And maybe you already have all your products covered by then. But if you have a stoma, for example, that's problematic, maybe you're going through extra supplies, maybe you have barrier rings that you're using, which are pretty damn expensive on their own, along with other products to keep your skin healthy, then that's when private insurance is probably going to be a huge benefit to you. Now, I believe Green Shield covers all of Canada. So if you're in another province that doesn't have like a generous grant, that might be something definitely to consider. And I don't know if the rates change at all from province to province. So you're going to have to look that up. But it's Green Shield Canada. So somebody asked, who is your supplier? I go through Edge Park. So Edge Park is a company out of the US. We don't have Edge Park here as far as I know. We have a lot of like places like retail stores that you can go to, medical supply stores that you can order products from. I honestly don't find it convenient to like go into a place and order products. So I order my stuff online, and I generally try to order from either Payless Medical or CanMed Direct. I find that those two, and I've been using them for years, I find that those two have very, very reasonable prices, way cheaper than a lot of the retail stores. They have like free shipping after like $150, that sort of thing. So it's really good. And usually it's like a day or two and I get my supplies. So it's very quick. I'm not sponsored in any way by those companies, just so you guys know. But those are the two that I use. I know depending on where you're from, it could be a challenge to get the supplies. So, and I don't know in the States, I think I have some people just tell me about, like, I'm not allowed to order this, I'm not allowed to order that, I have to get a certain brand. And to me, it's like crazy, right? Like my insurance, as long as it's bought in Canada, it doesn't matter who makes it or what, they'll reimburse it. So. Yeah. So the experience with their supplier was they're off and on with being consistent. I get the wrong supplies all the time. Yeah, that's a real shame. I don't have those issues. I think one time, yeah, and I don't even think it was from these guys, but I think one time I had received samples that were just like unusable. I think it was like -30 or something outside, and they just didn't travel well. So when I got them, it was like kind of like, hey guys, like I can't use this. It wasn't one of those suppliers, but it was another company. It might have actually been, and I'm gonna guess this. I might have actually been Argyle Medical in Montreal. They're a big salts dealer. So if you're looking for salts products in Canada, Argyle is probably a good place to look. But yeah, I had received samples, and they took care of it right away. It was never like an issue. But I know some people have like a nightmare with getting wrong supplies and then not being able to return it, or not getting the right one, or being stuck. I can't imagine that. So I'm sorry for anyone who experiences that. Yeah, so just other people saying in the chat here that they use Payless Medical. Yeah, excuse me. So yeah, so I think there used to be a company, or there might still be a website, Payless, Best Buy Medical. Best Buy Medical and Payless Medical, as far as I know, they're like the same company. So I used to actually buy products from Best Buy Medical, and they do have a U.S. and a Canadian warehouse or location, so you can order from them in the States too. But they're being looked after by Payless Medical, and I want to actually venture to say that Payless might also be a company that has U.S. offices or like U.S. warehouse. So you might even, if you're in the States, you might even be able to order from Payless too. You'd have to look into that. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. Are there any struggles with being vegan with an ostomy? So I'm going to answer this probably from two different perspectives, right? So there's the dietary component to being vegan, so like being on a plant-based diet, for example, and then there's the supplies angle. So are the supplies made using animal ingredients and that sort of thing. So that's actually where I had the biggest struggle before I had my ostomy. I was thinking, am I going to be able to eat anything like plant-based when I have an ostomy? Is that going to be a problem? And then later it was I discovered that a lot of these products, hell, they're made with animal ingredients. I'm like, well, now what do I do, right? So the point of vegan ostomy was really to help people navigate which products are and which aren't. And you'll notice in a lot of my reviews, especially the written ones, I'll make a note there whether or not the product uses or was made using animal ingredients. Now, for the most part, a lot of adhesives tend to use gelatin, and gelatin is an animal-based ingredient. So if you're someone like me who tries to avoid that, you're going to want to know which ones have it and which ones don't. So I actually have a list. I think there's like 800 different products on the list on the website that you can search through, and it'll tell you yes or no. And the yes or no comes from me contacting the suppliers, either by email or phone or face-to-face, looking at their MSDS sheets, inquiring in some other way and getting that information. So it's not like I'm guessing. This is all kind of verified. If you were to ask me, hey, what's the deal with this product? I can go back and trace that and say, yeah, I actually had a phone call with these guys and they said, it's all good or it's not good and what's changed. So that was the other component to it. Now, okay, so you're vegan. Let's say the product that you're using has animal ingredients. Now what do you do? Are you not vegan anymore? Is this a big issue? I approach ostomy supplies the same way I would approach medication. So if it's something that you need, okay, there's really not much you can do at that point, right? I don't expect any reasonable person, I don't know why I can't get that word out, reasonable person, I don't expect anyone like that to not wear an ostomy appliance. It just wouldn't make sense. Or not take medication. To me, that wouldn't make sense. So if it's something that you need, then you have to obviously use it. Now, in the same breath, I would say, tell those manufacturers, the ones that are still using animal ingredients, to reformulate, come up with something else. And I know Coloplast has been one of the companies to contact me and say, hey, you know what, that product that we used to use animal ingredients in, now we don't. So that is something that I love seeing. I always try to give those companies kudos when they make those changes. The products that I use right now, all of them across the board are free of animal ingredients. So, my Hollister appliance, any of the deodorants that I use, any of the stoma powders or barrier rings, anything like that I personally use day to day, will all be free of animal ingredients. So that's kind of where I stand on that. But yes, so as far as the food component goes, yeah, that was a really big worry for me. I was kind of like, well, I'm seeing all these lists saying, don't eat salad, don't eat beans, don't eat, grains. It's like, what the hell am I supposed to eat, right? I can't live off of white rice and just skinned potatoes my entire life. This is ridiculous. What am I supposed to do? So that's when, really part of why I started the blog too, to kind of catalog what I was eating. Was it nutritionally complete? And can I survive off of this? So yeah, here I am 4 years later, actually almost 18 years later now, that I've been a vegan, and I'm still alive, still standing, and it's all worked out. So, if that's a concern for you, and I do run into a lot of vegans who have just had an ostomy or something like that, and they've found me. It's a concern for a lot of people. So, reach out to me if you have any specific questions or anything like that. I have a lot of resources already on there about foods to eat and that sort of thing, how to kind of get around some of the concerns and how to address it from a different angle. And again, I have those resources for looking up whether or not a product has animal ingredients in it or not. So keep an eye on those and use those resources. Okay, so here's a question from Steven. You're late to the party. No, it doesn't matter. Whenever you get here, you get here. It's totally fine. I'm glad you asked the question, though. So it says, I'm 5 weeks after a colostomy surgery. and I have severe psoriasis. Any suggestions for getting the flange to stay stuck? Now, psoriasis is something that you're probably not going to be able to take care of on your own. So this is something you should talk to your stoma nurse about. You'll probably be told to get a referral to see a dermatologist so you can kind of work together, and you would have to treat the psoriasis in order to make everything else fall into place. Now, there might be certain things you can do in the meantime, depending on how bad it is. And you know, I wouldn't be in the position to give my advice on that. But have a stoma nurse take a look at your skin and then form some kind of plan. Sometimes it might be just using an extra adhesive on there. Sometimes it might be using protective sheet that would go underneath your appliance. So your appliance would go on top of it. In some extreme cases, it might even be going with a non-adhesive appliance, one that doesn't have to stick to your skin. So you know there are several options, but it is it requires a medical treatment now, and it's not really something that I can give just a general statement on for troubleshooting. So good luck though. Hopefully it's not a permanent thing for you. Sometimes, and I don't know your history, but sometimes some people might get psoriasis, just kind of like it kind of flares up like that, and then it kind of goes away. Usually goes away after treatment. So then things will start to get better, and hopefully that's the case for you. Yeah, I've been trying out more vegan food. That's fantastic, Grace. So I really wanted to have a tub of dairy-free Ben & Jerry's ice cream for this live stream, but I honestly didn't know if it would just melt before I'd reach the end of it. So I kind of just put that aside. But, you know, for anyone who's looking at becoming vegan or trying it, you know, for 30 days or whatever works for you, look for alternatives of foods that you already eat. So someone had mentioned in another video, you know, ice cream. What about ice cream? I love ice cream. Ben & Jerry's, I just mentioned, they now have a dairy-free ice cream. I tried one of their flavors, and it tastes really good. There are sorbets that are often dairy-free. There are many other brands there that have like dairy-free ice cream. So try those if ice cream is your thing. When you're talking about replacing milk, I would probably say that's the easiest thing to replace, because there are so many non-dairy milks out there, and they're just all so different. You can get a different flavor for each day of the month. It's unbelievable. And they're all very unique. Some of them aren't so good. So if you try soy milk from one brand and you didn't like it, try something else. Whether it's a different brand altogether, you know, you can still stick with soy milk and try a different brand, or a different type of non-dairy ingredient altogether. So it could be rice milk, almond milk, oat milk, hemp milk, soy milk. There are literally like dozens. There's so many different varieties, and then they all have their own unique flavors. Experiment, see if you can find something that works. I think for the most part, most people have the greatest difficulty with cheese. And now cheese, the reason for that is because it has a very unique, you know, aroma, flavor, the texture, you know, it melts. There are many qualities that cheese has that it makes it difficult to duplicate. Now, there are a lot of brands out there that get a lot of those, you know, key points down. My go-to when I'm looking at like a non-dairy cheese, like for example, to put on a pizza, is by a company called Daiya. They have slices, they have shreds, they have blocks, they're all kinds of products like that. But it smells very much like an authentic cheese, melts very much like an authentic cheese. If you actually look at any of my photos or videos where I have like a pizza or something that looks like there's like melted cheese on it, 99% of the time that's going to be Daiya. I might have some other non-dairy brand just like to try, but Daiya is like readily available everywhere, and you know, it tastes like cheese. Now, I'm not a huge cheese fan. The rest of my family love to eat Daiya. often, so I'll eat it. But like if you're making mac and cheese or something like that, it's a fantastic product and it works. It melts really well, and you shouldn't really have any problems. Now, there may be other brands depending on what country you're in. Try them out. Not all of them are going to be good, but I will say if you're looking for vegan cheeses, keep an eye out and make sure that it's actually vegan, because a lot of the times you'll find non-dairy cheese that actually use casein, and casein is a protein found in milk, and so it'll be like a vegetarian cheese, but it's not a vegan cheese. So if you're looking specifically for that, make sure it actually says that on the label. Double check the ingredients just in case. But now I'm going to be actually going to the Toronto Veg Fest, or at least, knock on wood, hopefully be going to the Toronto Veg Fest, and they have tons of like different food vendors there, food manufacturers that have like these non-dairy products, mock meats, non-dairy milks and stuff like that. So if you can find a Veg Fest in your city, check it out and sample as much as you can, because you will find something. I guarantee you will find something that you'll absolutely love, and it will make you just totally forget about animal products like altogether. You'll probably find a lot of the foods, a lot of the vegan foods, the vegan alternatives, they're better in many ways. So for example, I know a lot of people, and it's kind of weird when I hear it, but a lot of people are like, when they're cooking meat, they have to like dispose of the grease in a certain way, or else it like clogs their sink. And I'm kind of like thinking, what the? Never have to have that problem ever again. I never have to worry about, cleaning out pans because there's like, grease and fat and whatever in there, because it just doesn't happen. I just don't have to deal with that. But, I even like with stuff like milk, with dairy, I remember there always being this kind of like a weird kind of like lingering aftertaste. If you like smell the glass, it kind of like you can smell that. And that's something that doesn't happen with like vegan products, non-dairy products. It just doesn't happen. Same thing with eggs. There's kind of like this lingering, you don't get that with vegan alternatives. And if you're still looking for the authenticity of the flavor of eggs or something like that, there's always an ingredient you can find, or a product that you can find, that will give you that flavor. So for some people, just as an example, because I had mentioned eggs, there is a type of, I think it's like black salt or some kind of salt, but it has a sulfury taste to it. And that apparently, when it's added into an ingredient like a mock egg omelet or something like that, it apparently gives it a very authentic smell and flavor of egg. So that might be something to add in there, right? For other people, you might have to add like a smoke flavor in order to get the flavor of bacon or some other smoked meat, smoked ham, or whatever it is. So you just adding that smoke flavor and maybe a bit of salt might give you the exact same experience and same taste that you were expecting. So, that's one thing to consider. Whenever I talk to somebody who's interested in going vegan, I really kind of make it a point to say, don't go in expecting like non-dairy milk to taste like milk, right? Don't expect a veggie burger to taste like beef. It's not. But as you continue to eat it, you will find flavors that you just never thought were possible, and you're going to probably prefer them. When I make bean burgers now, or when I make mushrooms now, even though like mushrooms, to me, mushrooms smell like meat when you're cooking them. And it's a very interesting property. And then when you're chewing them, you have that kind of meaty bite and texture to it. A lot of people, they can very easily switch from one to another. Now, I will caution, though, if you're going to be switching, substituting, make sure you're kind of getting the right nutritional profiles too. So as an example, if you're traditionally eating beef burgers, having a portobello burger, that might be okay. It's a good substitute because you're getting away from eating beef, but it's not like there's hardly very many nutrients in a portobello mushroom, where you're not going to get the same nutritional profile. So in that case, I would go to something like a bean burger instead for longer term, or even like a mock meat burger, which would have some form of soy protein or something like that in there. to boost up the nutritional profile. It'll also be high in iron and everything else, just like the meat counterpart. So you'll be closer to like an apples to apples comparison there. So yeah, like keep that in mind. That's great. So let me know if there are any other questions. I'll probably just stick around for a few more minutes. Guys, I really appreciate you sticking around this long. I I absolutely love the questions coming in the comments. Hey, Christy. So who here saw the eclipse today? Because that was like really phenomenal. I went out during my lunch and, we didn't get a full eclipse here. We had a partial eclipse, but it was like more than half of the sun was covered. And it was just such a surreal experience. It looked as if, you get that kind of like purpley, orangey glow in the air when the sun is setting. That's kind of what it looked like. But the sun was like straight up in the air. It was so bizarre, and it got kind of cooler. It was just such a surreal experience. I would love to have partial eclipses like every day of the year if I could. It's just really cool. The intensity on your skin of the sun, it was like it didn't burn your skin. It didn't feel hot. It was really an interesting experience. So I really hope that some of you guys were able to see like the full-on effect of that solar eclipse. That would have been something. We made a t-shirt to celebrate. That's fantastic. Okay, so have you found bean burgers give you increased gas or output like whole beans? Okay. So whenever anybody talks about beans, the natural question is, well, what about gas, right? And that's a valid question. And I think there's actually a couple of reasons why beans cause gas in a lot of people. So for some people, it might actually just be an enzyme that they need that's really not digesting the beans properly. But for most people, it's going to be the fiber. So beans are super high in fiber, very good for you. But if you're not used to eating beans and you have like a very high fiber diet, all of a sudden, you're going to have gas because all of a sudden you have this food source for your bacteria in your gut, and they like have a blast. They go overboard, they they binge on all that fantastic food you're giving them. And that's where a lot of the extra gas will come from. So how you're preparing beans, that's going to make a difference. When I make bean burgers, I tend to make them with canned beans, and then I tend to like rinse them really well. And I find that almost never causes a problem for gas with me. For other people, you might find that if you're making, like actually cooking dry beans, when you've soaked them overnight, make sure you're dumping out that water, give it a really good rinse. Some people will soak them more than once just to get rid of all that extra. I think it's an enzyme actually, and I can't remember the name of it, but there is something in there that when you're soaking beans, you lessen this component that has a tendency to cause gas and indigestion and that sort of thing. But for, I think most people, it's going to be the fiber, because it doesn't matter, even if you're not eating beans, if you just increase your fiber intake considerably more than what you're used to, you're going to have an increase of gas. Now, for the studies that I've seen on gas and diet or fiber or beans or all of the above, this is a very temporary thing. So you may have gas for like the first week, and then it will just normalize back to like where you first started. So you may not even notice any increase in gas output before and after you started introducing more beans into your diet. So for most people, gas is normal. Like I don't think you can be gas free. I think gas is a good indication that your gut bacteria is happy, that they're, doing the job that they're supposed to do. You're feeding them the right foods. It's a positive thing to have gas. But I think a lot of us are just worried about the excess gas. Like we don't want to just constantly have a bag making a lot of noise or constantly filling up with gas and having to deal with that. So be cautious when you're looking at foods like that. If you are making your own bean burgers for the first time, you know what, gas might be a side effect for the first few times that you've had it, but as you continually introduce fiber, it'll normalize. So don't let a little bit of gas shy you away from like an amazing bean burger, because there are some incredible bean burgers out there. Yes, and thanks for mentioning that, Christy. For some people, having a digestive enzyme like Beano will help to digest those beans. Now, I don't believe Beano is actually a vegan product. There's another one, and I have it on on a couple of my articles probably. There's a plant-based alternative to Beano, and that might be something you want to look up if you're vegan and you do need to have something like that. I went with like a wide spectrum, or actually I was on quite a few different enzyme products, but I was on like a high spectrum or wide spectrum enzyme supplement at one point. I honestly didn't find it changed my digestion at all. I don't know if it was just like a bad supplement or what, but for some people that might help. Definitely consider that. Gas X was another product that was mentioned. Gas X won't necessarily eliminate gas, but what it helps to do is it helps to break apart the gas bubbles in your digestive tract, and that will help ease the passage of gas. I actually use Gas X a lot when I was flaring before my ostomy. I had like really bad, really painful gas, and Gas X definitely helped to reduce some of that pain. It didn't get rid of the gas, but it made it more bearable, made it more comfortable. So that might be an option. Take care, Don. Thanks again for stopping by, and I really appreciate your support. Yeah, so Christy mentioned, about the bean burgers. Could you maybe do a sweet potatoes with beans in a recipe and put an ingredient that's easier to digest and add more beans as you acclimate to the change? That's actually a really great thing to try. You don't even have to make bean burgers really out of beans, right? You can make something similar to a bean burger that doesn't necessarily use all beans or a lot of beans. When I make a bean burger, I tend to add oats, and oats acts as a binder, and then I add a bunch of veggies in there, and then I kind of like mash them all up together. So it's not like 100% bean. It's probably 60% beans. The rest of it is like veggies or oats or something like that. So yeah, if you want to like lessen the beans and add in another ingredient that works well with that, that might be a better option for you. I really appreciate you mentioning that, Chrissy. That's a great tip. Okay, guys, so it's 9:30 Eastern time. I'm going to call it a night. I really am very thankful to have you guys here. I really appreciate all your support. I want to give a special thanks to people that have donated through my website. I really appreciate the donations. As you know, running a website isn't exactly cheap. And it isn't exactly easy to do when you don't have like an income. I'm not selling products on my website, so I'm not making money any other ways. So your donations do help. None of my content is sponsored in any way. You'll notice I don't have any banner ads on the website. For the product reviews that I do, I don't get paid for any of them, and I don't think I mentioned that actually in any of my videos, but it is something that I think you guys should know. All of my product reviews are completely unsponsored. Most of the time I'm actually paying for the products out of pocket, or my insurance company pays for it. Sometimes they'll just be received as samples, and on the rare occasion I'll get it like before the product's even launched, just to try out and stuff like that. But like there's at no point in that process do the manufacturers have any influence over what my product reviews say, unless there's like a correction. Like if sometimes it'll be like, oh yeah, it's available in North America, and then I might get an email saying actually it's not available in the US yet, so I'll make a correction, but they won't influence the actual review in any other way to change my conclusion, let's say. So that never happens, and I hope that you guys find the content to be more trustworthy because of that. So I do appreciate the donations that come in, and thanks again for that. Hey, Allison. Thank you so much. So guys, stay tuned for more videos. This session, I would imagine, is being recorded either on my computer or through YouTube. So this should be available in the next day or so as a video that you can just play back at your leisure. If you missed it, now's your chance to definitely go back and take a look at it. But I wanted to thank everyone for joining. If you like these live chats, let me know, because you know what? I don't have a problem with doing more of them. I have fun doing this, and I really enjoy being able to say hi and chat with you guys. So that's it for now, guys. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe another live chat. Take care.